Folks, this has turned into one that we circle on our calendars now. Bama, Texas A&M, they get together at Kyle Field. We know what all happened there 2 years ago. Last play of the game, field goal for the Aggies for the win. We got Stephen M. Smith, touchdown Alabama here, breaking things down for us. Join him on his show. It's every Monday, Wednesday, Friday right here on YouTube. In my own words, 6:30 Central. Stephen, how we doing today?
Doing great, Mark. You got the wild crowd at Kyle Field this weekend, College Station. As you mentioned, 2 years ago, Alabama went down there with Bryce Young and came up short there with a 38-41 loss as Seth Small hit the game-winning field goal there for the Aggies.
In fact, both games the last 2 years have gone down to the final play as Haynes King was firing the ball into the end zone to try to take down the Tide last year, but Bama survived by 4 in that one. They lead the series 12-3, but again, because of the great recruiting on both sides and everything else, a few words between Saban and Jimbo a couple of years ago that things have been quite spicy in this series. Looking back at Mississippi State, Stephen, a bit of a rough start for the offense and all around. Couple sacks on the first few drives, a false start, couple 3-and-outs, throw in a muffed punt, and things got off to a rocky start in Starkville.
They did. It was a lot of miscommunication there on the offensive line. Also, Jalen Milroe needing to understand, when to throw the ball away when there's not anything there. The first few sacks that he took of the offensive line gave him time to throw the football, but Milroe got to have that clock in his mind where if there's nothing there, just throw the football away, play the next down, the next possession there. And the muffed punt, that was something where Kool-Aid McKinstry not quite, I guess, recognizing, judging where the ball is going, and along with that, not fielding the ball as cleanly as what he would like to. That's something that he will get better at and will fine-tune and improve on. But there were times there in that first half there, Mark, where the offense and special teams, as far as the return game is concerned, was sputtering a bit there until one Miss Terry got her own husband, Nick Saban, fired up and had him chewing people out as he normally would do prior to the last few years. And maybe Miss Terry ignited her husband to get back to being a bit fiery out there.
Well, I don't know what Miss Terry feels about it, but now, Saban can always, kind of point to her as, that's the reason I got riled up. That's the reason I got in the players' faces. Miss Terry wanted it. I just do what I'm told.
Honestly, this was the first game in 17 years that they've been that she's missed. She's normally right there on the sideline with him. She's normally, well, not on the sideline, but she's right at the games with him. And normally after each game, they have a kiss. They share a kiss there before he goes to the post-game press conference. So for the first time in the 17-year run, she was not there. And so she ends up watching the game from TV. According to Coach Saban, she sees things a bit better from the TV than what she did in person. So she picked out some things and brought that to his attention. And upon bringing that to his attention, he said he got coached up upon getting home that, hey, this is something that we need to do here. So sometimes it maybe takes your wife to bring something out of you that not the average person can.
I think many of us can relate to that. So, Stephen, we'll coach up the offense a little bit here. Run heavy, 43 runs, 12 passes. That includes, of course, Jalen Milroe taking off a few times and a few designed runs for him. Your thoughts about the run-pass ratio? Jalen Milroe was effective in a limited role in terms of throwing the ball downfield, 10 for 12.
I don't think Alabama needed the passing game in this matchup right here. I did like the run game showing up a bit more. You did have near 200 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns. Jace McClellan got involved. Roydell Williams had 44 yards rushing, so I like the balance there. And I felt like Saban kind of wanted this to be more of a gritty, grinded out type of game, especially when you look at taking on Auburn down the road, LSU down the road, Arkansas down the road, of course, Texas A&M this weekend. However, I feel like this week you want to see more of that passing game open up. A&M, one of the best teams in the country in terms of sacks, in the top 5. They are going to stack the box and force Jalen Milroe to beat them throwing the football. So I think this week you want to see more of that passing game open up. But last week, because of the fact that State's defensive secondary kind of suspect, if you will, Saban wanted to kind of win this game from a gritty, grinded out perspective.
7 sacks for A&M against Arkansas. They had 15 TFLs in that game. They were living in KJ Jefferson's lap. My goodness, they were just feasting on that offensive line and living in the backfield. You know, many of the names that we've seen as 5-star recruits through the last few years, especially on the defensive side, that were bound for Texas A&M, we're now seeing those guys become major forces in the SEC.
We are, and that's going to be the biggest key for Alabama this weekend, is that offensive line, primarily at left tackle. Whether it's Caden Proctor, whether it's Elijah Pritchett, that left tackle's got to come to play, because they're going to be dealing with a lot of these stunts, a lot of these blitz packages, a lot of this movement that A&M's going to try to create there on one Jalen Milroe. So this offensive line from the center, Seth McLaughlin, and getting these snaps in order, whether it's Seth McLaughlin snapping it, whether you choose to put Darian Dalcourt back there at that spot. You got Terrence Ferguson, who's got some versatility as a center and as an offensive guard. Whomever they have snapping the football, that has got to be right there. You can't have the pre-snap penalties at Kyle Field, which causes the crowd to get way more into it, which ignites more of that defensive line pressure. The offensive line has got to have one of its best games of the year this Saturday.
Getting back to this running game, the yards per carry this past weekend, Jace McClellan a little over 4 yards per carry, Roydell Williams at a 4.4, and they're a little bit better than that on the season, but we're not seeing the dominant numbers. Najee Harris, I would say, would be the last guy that was a dominant star running back at Alabama, featured back by himself to a certain extent, and not seeing 6.5 yards per carry like we did a few years ago.
Some of that is geared toward the offensive line, Mark. I guess now kind of starting to find themselves. You look back at that 2020 offensive line with Najee Harris. You had Landon Dickerson, who was the big glue guy at center. He kind of kept everything policed there. You had Alex Leatherwood, who had a ton of experience. You had Evan Neal growing into his own. Deontay Brown, a lot of experience there at that guard position. So that 2020 group had a lot of guys that kind of knew who they were and what they were. This group right here has kind of had to grow slowly into what it is. I know there was a lot of talk in the offseason about this group wanting to be physical, wanting to make teams quit, that type of deal. And this group has experience also. But I think now playing well together and gelling well together, that's kind of starting to now take shape, going back to the second half against Ole Miss. And then when it got its footing going there against Mississippi State, I feel like this group knows how good it can be, but it's about challenging itself to know that, hey, we can play better than what we're playing, and proving that. And I think this group is starting to kind of prove to itself that it can be that group. So it goes as far as what the offensive line takes it.
Stephen M. Smith, touchdownalabama.com. That's the destination right there. Also, in my own words, Stephen's show right here on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 Central, in my own words. Talking defense, Stephen, Deontay Lawson, can you give us the circumstances involving that injury and how that's going to affect personnel on the defensive side?
Well, right now, Lawson did injure his ankle against Ole Miss a couple of weeks ago. He definitely missed Mississippi State and could miss multiple other games just due to it's a bit more severe than what was initially laid on. So he couldn't miss his A&M game. We'll watch him this week in practice to see how he looks, how he progresses. But right now, missed Mississippi State, could miss multiple other games down the stretch here. But when you look at now, Jihad Campbell is the immediate next guy up at that weak side linebacker position. He was the immediate backup behind Lawson. Campbell, a former five-star from New Jersey, played well against the Bulldogs, actually led the team with 14 tackles, did have his first career pick. So Saban happy with his progress and his progression behind Jihad Campbell. Bama also has Justin Jefferson, who can play at that position, the JUCO linebacker. It's got Sean Murphy, who can play at that position. Also, Ian Jackson, who can play at that spot. Another guy, Kendrick Blackshire, the former four-star from Duncanville, Texas, though he is the backup at middle linebacker behind Tresman Marshall. Kendrick Blackshire can play at that spot. Also, keep your eyes on former five-star from Thompson High School here in Alabama, Jeremiah Alexander. He was recruited to be an outside linebacker, but is now getting some work inside due to the injury that happened to Lawson. So Alabama's got some depth there at that position, but right now where Lawson is concerned, yes, missed the game against Mississippi State, could miss multiple other games as well, starting off here with Texas A&M, but it comes down to how does he look this week in practice? The team will be out there today, following what it did yesterday. If Lawson can continue to take some strides forward, maybe we could see him against A&M, but as of right now, he looks to still be questionable.
Facing Texas A&M offense, of course, led by Bobby Petrino. Max Johnson is the guy in play with Connor Weekman on the shelf. Bama should be familiar with Max Johnson. Of course, he's a KG veteran. He's been around a long time now. Had a couple years ago with LSU, 27 touchdowns, 6 picks. So he can be effective. And I don't know that I haven't seen too many quarterbacks that just stand in you know where he's going to be. Unlike Weigman, who's going to run around and make some plays on the perimeter, Max Johnson, you know where to find him. He's going to be in the pocket, but that guy will deliver a football and stand in the face of a rush. And, he's used to getting hit. He doesn't mind it. He stands in the pocket and delivers, and they've got a 1-2 punch at running back that's been effective. We talked about big recruits on the defensive side. Evan Stewart's that guy at wide receiver who's starting to make some big plays. So a lot to deal with this Texas A&M offense.
Oh, absolutely, Mark. I remember vividly Max Johnson a couple of years ago at LSU, where Alabama had the 20-14 win. That came down to the wire. Max Johnson made big throws in that game and stood in the face of Will Anderson coming at him, Dallas Turner coming at him, big Fedarian Mathis coming at him. Max Johnson took some shots, but he stood right there and made a lot of plays and nearly pulled that thing out for LSU. So we know that young man is tough as a big price stake. We know Max Johnson is a tough dude, and he's going to be asked to do it again with the Dallas Turner coming at him, with the Chris Braswell coming at him, a Tresman Marshall coming at him, and multiple other guys. But fortunately for him, he does have talented pieces with Evan Stewart, also Anaya Smith, who is back for A&M, and Anaya Smith taking this game very personal. Very personal. We saw the clip of him talking about his brother Maurice Smith, who played under Nick Saban at Alabama from 2013 to I believe 2016. Maurice Smith played for the program, and the situation that happened there about Maurice wanting to transfer to Georgia in the SEC, and the SEC kind of holding up that transfer, and Nick Saban had his own thoughts about that as well, which ultimately, Maurice did end up getting that transfer and playing for the Bulldogs, but that still kind of stung up Anais a little bit. So he takes this match very personally, and it kind of adds some chippiness there to the fire. So it's going to be fun to watch that whole thing unfold. But, Max Johnson, tough guy. He's got SEC experience. It's going to be a very fun matchup.
I always like to hit you with this one, Stephen. Either side of the ball, whoever you want to spotlight, who's been emerging, who could be a X factor in this game?
Who could be an X factor in this game at that tight end position for Alabama? Amari Niblack could be huge in this game. Could be very huge. And he's starting to chirp a bit now. I had 3 catches for 61 yards against Mississippi State. Nearly brought in a touchdown catch in that game. Could not quite keep that foot in bounds. If he could have, would have been an incredible catch there. But here's a guy that, if I'm Tommy Rees, I got to target that young man. at 6'3", 6'4", 233, near 240 pounds, a matchup nightmare. You can have him on the end line. You can flex him out wide as a receiver. He's improved as a blocker. Amari Black is a matchup nightmare out there. You got to get that young man the football. He could have a huge game here against A&M.
Nye Black, 8 catches, $158, 2 touchdowns. If you're doing the math, that's almost 20 yards per catch out of a tight end. You don't see that very often. I know it's only 8 receptions, but it speaks to what Steven's talking about. In My Own Words is your destination every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on YouTube, folks. 6:30 Central, Touchdown Alabama, Stephen M. Smith. Stephen, enjoy the game. We appreciate you as always.
Appreciate it, Mark, man. Looking forward to how this Tide does in Aggie land this weekend.